Welcome to this video in which I'm building the Airfix starter set of a Supermarine Spitfire Vc. If you find it enjoyable and useful, then please remember to like the video below, and while you're there, why not subscribe to the channel to see other build projects as they're completed, as well as tips and tricks for modelers of every level. The Spitfire is an icon of aviation and a perfect subject for a starter set. Now most of the time I'll use just what comes in the kit, but from time to time I'll highlight a few extras like this that will just add a little something to your model. But remember, it's your choice how much detail to do. Just sticking with what's supplied will still look amazing. This kit is skill level 1, meaning it's suitable for everyone, and it comes with 1 flying hour token. If you join the Airfix club, you can collect these flying hours and use them to get free kits in the future. Onto the kit itself, and as usual the first thing we notice is the impressive box art, but here at the top there's also a list of extra contents. So we open it up at one end and let's see what's inside. First of all, there's the paintbrush. It's a humble number 2 medium, and the paints and glue. There are 4 colours in this kit, which will be plenty. Then there's the pack of parts, the instructions, decals and an advice sheet. Now when I opened the box, the first thing I saw was this, and I thought, well, that's a very small Spitfire. Of course, it's actually the specially shaped stand. We'll have a look at the rest of the parts in a moment. Here is the instruction sheet. It's all very well drawn out and colour coded. It tells you exactly where to apply glue, and it's very clear about what goes where. Then there is a decal sheet with the markings for the Spitfire, one of the Polish wing aircraft based at RAF Northolt in West London, just with the most important markings included. And finally there's a sheet of advice for anyone who has never made a model before. A very good set of tips they are, but you might also want to check out my top 10 tips for beginners on my channel as well. Back now to the bag of parts, and there's a smaller bag inside with the clear canopy moulding. Then there are these 3 other sprues of grey plastic, just 26 pieces in total, but they will make a very good model. Now the first thing we do, as always, is to give the parts a gentle clean and a mild detergent. Just say a few drops of washing up liquid in a cup of water. This cleans any oil residue left over from the moulding process. When it's dry, I always like to give the model a light spray of primer. This makes it easier to paint later. Then you can start cutting parts from the sprue. Now here I've got some modelling snippers, but you can use any fine pointed clippers or a craft knife. What is important is that you sand down any bits of sprue that are still left on the part. You can use a fine nail file or a nail polishing stick, but if you're going to do a bit more modelling, you might want to make a range of sanding sticks. Remember to make sure the part is completely clean. Sanding in just one direction can leave some scarf sticking to the other side of the model, which will make joining difficult later. But make sure you're removing what you should. On this kit, don't sand off this bit just behind the cockpit. It's supposed to be there. An extra I'm doing today is painting the inside of the model with pale green. This interior green just looks a bit more authentic, but you can use the light grey from the kit if you prefer. It's entirely up to you. But what you should do is paint black where the instrument panel would be, just here. You get black with the kit. Time now to join the 2 fuselage halves together. Now with the glue you just want to squeeze a little bit on and then spread it as evenly as you can along the joining faces of one half. Don't squeeze it on like toothpaste. Then simply put the 2 halves together. Press them to make sure of the fit and then leave them to set. You can hold them together with clothes pegs or rubber bands, but just nothing too strong. While that's setting up, we can look at the propeller assembly. This has 2 parts that fit in the fuselage and then the propeller itself. The 2 parts are a propeller hub and they push fit together, although there's no harm in adding a tiny drop of glue at one end. Push the parts really well together. This hub fits in a cutout at the nose and it's held in place with the engine cover on top. Now if you keep the glue away from the hub, you'll be able to turn the propeller when the kit's completed. So that's the basic fuselage built. We'll leave that alone for a while and get on with the wings. The wings come in 3 parts, 2 upper surfaces and 1 lower surface. The tailplanes are also on this sprue. Once you've cut out and sanded the parts, assemble them with glue as before. Again, you might want to hold the parts in place with clothes pegs or bulldog clips, or even something like masking tape. Some of the parts we'll paint on the sprues, such as these wheels. Now it's a good idea, if you can, to get rid of the bits of sprue that can get in the way. Then you can paint the undercarriage doors in light grey and the tyres in black. While those are drying, we can go back to the wings. Here we are gluing the pilot's seat to the base of the cockpit. You can paint it dark grey, but I prefer a spot of this reddish brown. Again, entirely your choice. Then a bit of glue and we can push the fuselage section onto the wing section. They should snap together quite well. Don't worry about any gaps, you won't notice them after painting. Then we can fit the 2 tailplanes. They sit very snugly in place and are easy to set level when viewed from behind. You do get a little model pilot. Now the kit says to use the green colour to paint him. Well, I'd use the green over the body and maybe the hat, but leave the face either light grey or as it is, just for a bit of contrast. Of course. Next, onto the bottom of the wings, I'm putting the various radiator and cooler inlets. These fit very nicely into the gaps provided. We're pretty much now done with most of the build, so it's time to start painting. Now first of all is the light grey provided, which we use on the underside of the aircraft, the wings and the tailplanes. Next I'll paint the dark grey supplied all over the upper surfaces. Now just be careful where the upper and lower surfaces meet. Follow the panel lines to get a nice straight edge. Then it's the dark green, which is the other half of the camouflage, on the top. Now the paint supplied might be a little thick, so mix it well with the cocktail stick first, then let it down with a bit of water to make it flow more easily. Perhaps use the lid as a mixing palette. Then paint in the green patches using the picture on the back of the box to guide you. Now don't worry if the colour doesn't cover everything first time. Don't slap on loads. Let the first coat dry and then apply another coat later on. This is also a good way of getting rid of any brush strokes. Before long, you'll have a beautifully camouflaged plane. Onto a couple of fiddly parts, and here's the radio mast. This needs to be cut out very carefully. And then there's a propeller. Again, cut carefully and sand away any excess gently. Small bits like this I tend to paint when they're stuck with blue tack to an old bit of wood. For the propeller, use black paint thinned slightly with water to allow you a smooth stroke with the brush. This will give a nice clean result. The radio mast can be painted in its final colour, here the dark grey. When the black on the propeller has dried, turn it over and paint the propeller boss with the light grey, and then the front surfaces of the propellers with more black. Next is the canopy. Now the first thing you do is cut off this little moulding tag at the front. Then as carefully as you can, paint a bit of black over the frame of the canopy. Don't worry if you go over the edge a little bit, because when you've finished, you can scrape the excess away with the sharp end of a cocktail stick or a bamboo skewer. This is one advantage of using acrylic paints. Then you can go over it again with the finished colour, here dark green, and give it a final tidy up. I think that when you start applying the decals, a model really starts coming together. Cut the decals you want when you need them and not before. Soak them in slightly warm water in a dish for a minute or two to loosen them. Now check with the box where the decals are to go. You can see how they relate to panel lines on the wings. Put a little water on the surface first, Then holding the decal paper and tweezers, slide the decal into place. Now you can use your clean paintbrush to gently push the decal into its final position. Very gently dab away excess water with a tissue and then leave it alone to dry. Then you can continue to work your way around the aircraft. The side markings are colourful and add visual impact. In this kit, the pale grey-green identification strip is supplied as a decal. Lay the middle of it over the top of the fuselage so that the joint meets up underneath. There are also decals showing the pilot's history of kills in combat. We give the decals a good hour or so to set up before adding the last bits. First are the retracted undercarriage legs we painted earlier. You can have the undercarriage down as well, but I prefer the clean look for this kit. Then the radio mast goes in just behind the cockpit. Now I've spent a little bit of time painting up the pilot just because I've got loads of bits of paint lying around, but you really don't have to. Give the canopy a final touch up and put it on the fuselage. There's a tab at the back you should glue that slots in, and then a dab of glue at the very front of the canopy as you push it down into place. A couple of last bits of paint to do, black on the tail wheel and on the engine exhausts. We're going to set up the stand next, just 2 parts to cut out and glue together. Now you can paint it whatever colour you like. I'm spraying mine with a silvery colour, but black looks pretty good as well. The very last bit to add is the propeller. Glue it to the front with the aircraft supported off a table to allow it to set. And there it is, the kit's finished. Now I think it looks very fine and perfectly reflects the beauty of the design. Now if you're happy with the kit at this stage, then that is excellent. It's entirely up to you. If you just want to add a couple of little extras, there's a couple of things that you should maybe look at. First of all, 3 paints will add a lot of detail to your kit. Red, yellow and white. Now with the white, I'm going to paint the tips of the propellers and also a couple of squares over the machine gun ports on the wings. The white just allows colour added on top to really pop out. This is especially true of the yellow we're now going to paint on the propeller tips. Yellow is rarely strong enough to go over black by itself. And on the patches on the wings, we're going to add red. These are tiny little changes that can make a real difference to your model. Then you can apply a very thin wash of black to the panel lines, and that helps make them stand out. But do remember to wipe off any excess. Finally, you can use a silver or pale grey pencil along the panel lines just to make the paint at the edges look a bit worn and chipped. Now, whether you do all of this or you just simply stick to the paint supplied in the kit, this Spitfire is an excellent model that anyone can make to impress. It makes a perfect gift for birthdays or Christmas. Now I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please remember to like it and to subscribe to my channel for more starter sets and more complex builds. Happy modelling, see you next time.